You need to lock on to what your goal is and lock out all the noise.
Hello there, it's me, Steve Mellor, and welcome in to GrowthReady, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high-performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we welcome in Denis Cauvier, global speaker, best-selling author, and organizational culture expert whose decades of experience working with those at the top of organizations around the world has highlighted that if we are truly committed to growth, then we better get ready to surround ourselves with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to get to where we want to go. Hello and welcome into the most recent installment of the GrowthReady podcast. I'm excited to have a returning guest. I was just joking with him off air. He is part of a small club that I've been fortunate to welcome back to the show, and we get to welcome in Dr. Denis Cauvier today. But Denis, before we start to discuss all things growth and specifically growth readiness, what does it mean to you, brother, to be growth ready?
Yeah, great question. And first of all, it's great to be here, Steve. Wonderful. And I got a lot to share specifically on being growth ready. But I think the starting point I would suggest to people, because I have so many people around the world asking me similar questions. My first question is a question back to them, and that is why? Why do you want to be growth ready? Growth ready to solve what problem, to make what pain go away, to seize what opportunity, to enhance your life and those that you care about, whether personally, professionally, or otherwise, or hybrid. Why? Why do you want to do this? Because, and I know you know this very well, and so many of your guests articulate this in different ways, it's a process. It's a process that takes a lot of intentions, a lot of focus, a lot of effort, a lot of coming out of your comfort zone. So I'm saying, just hang on. Before you really do what you really need to do something notable, worthwhile, are you really in your mind ready to dive into growth? So that growth. The second word is ready. Are you truly ready? Well, unless you've understood your why, what is your dominant motivations for doing so, and you have clarity on that, and a real intellectual as well as an emotional connection to your why, I'd say you might be causing some damage to yourself and others by jumping on that.
Yeah, and again, I love already you've broken the word down. You've looked at it from both sides, and it is something that you're doing so often around the world in the work that you do with organizations and as a keynote speaker as well, specifically. And just to further preface, my point about you coming back on the show, you were here when the show used to be called Career Competitor, and so I'm asking you this question about growth readiness for the first time. I don't think I'll ever be able to have someone come back on and ask them the same question again, because it doesn't really work that way anymore. But what I would like to say immediately, though, is that you acknowledge the problem first of all. When you switch it around like that and ask the question back to the person, let's say if they're asking you what I just asked you, for you to then say, well, what's the problem? What is the problem that you've decided that is worth tackling, that is worth going for? And I'd love to start there, man. I'd love to start with just when someone does come to you and you turn it around on them and you start to say, hey, what's the problem? I'm curious, why is it so important for us to acknowledge the problem as maybe one of, if not the first step?
Yeah, and I love the way you've asked that, but I'm going to offer a slight different twist to that
Yeah.
if I can. It's what's the problem and or the opportunity. So I look at it, if you talk about good old-fashioned sales training, you go to any sales course, they're going to talk about, you got to uncover the buying motivators, because before someone makes the purchase decision, you have to tap in, you need to understand the buying motivators, and then you have to respond with your project solution or whatever is going to fulfill that. Well, people that train this stuff, some people come up with like 65 different possible who can remember that crap? To me, it's real simple. Steve, what it boils down to, why people will make the decisions they do, and I'm aligning the buy motivators with decisions to do what? To change, to grow, okay?
Mm.
It is a combination of pain and pleasure. A huge motivator for humans is to move away from a position of pain. Another great motivator is move towards a position or place of pleasure. So if you want to use these terms, you're talking about the problem. Well, the problem would be what the pain is. The problem is you've missed out on opportunities. Your career is stalled. Your business, is losing market share. Whatever the case may be. But also the flip side of it is what is also the pleasure? Well, the pleasure could be feeling more actualized, more in alignment with your core values, feeling that you're now a proper role model to your children, that your business is more sustainable, you care about the employees that you work for you want to make sure that they still get a paycheck next week, whatever your motivation is. So to me, I say, ideally, the real starting point to be growth ready is to do the right punch left hook kind of 1-2 combination, and that is articulate very clearly and logically where are you going to move yourself, what positions of pain are you going to remove yourself by growing to that desired state, and simultaneously what opportunities, what pleasure points will you receive. So what you're doing is intellectually, you're locking in why, again, that keyword, why
Mhm.
you want to go through all of this, but also our decisions. See, our buying decisions as consumers, we buy based upon an emotional response, but then we are internalize and justify based on logic. Well, I think we need to look at to consumer behavior and sales, to the psychology of what really makes us get off our butt and do something.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that. It's a fabulous point. And again, it's the first time since we've moved this show now towards Growth Ready someone's made that point around what if we were just to simply look at it from the way we look at things as consumers. I mean, I'm there. I'm as guilty of this as anybody. I'm on my phone. I'm scrolling through things, and emotionally, that's just like, wow, that's a great shirt. I really want that shirt. And then you get the shirt, and you go, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? The shirt, this is not my color. This is not my style. Whatever it is. And then you suddenly sort of sit with that knowledge of knowing you've now gone and done this out of an emotional state. And in so much when it comes to that growth process, we are so like there's so many temptations, right? You look at growth, wow, this would be wonderful if this worked out, or this is a great idea if I go do this, which brings us to the second part of the word, right? The readiness. It's like you're really getting into that right away at the outset of the psychology around the readiness and the why, as you've said a couple times already, why it is we want to go do what it is we claim we want to go do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in fact, I have an acronym. You know me well. I'm a
Love
bit
an
of a
acronym.
word geek. As an author, I just love acronyms, and I have an acronym that I've been using for years in working with my clients around the planet, and it's growth. I mean, it's just the word growth, and
Mm,
I'm going to go through them very quickly just to share sort of a model, and then let's just whatever you want me to articulate more, we'll jump into.
sure.
Okay. But the G is really about goals, demand, change. The concept here, very succinctly, is this, that the bigger our goals are, the more it demands that we make changes from within. Otherwise, people saying, well, why do I have to change? No, that's not necessary. Everyone else should change. No, no, no. If you're not where you want to be, in other words, you have set a big, hairy, audacious goal for yourself and you're nowhere there, it's not because the world has to bend to your will. It's because you have to change. The bigger
Mm,
the goal, and again, we're talking about growth. So we should be able to express our growth intentions and desires into specific goals that should be measurable, time based, all that kind of smart stuff that
mhm,
everyone talks about, right? But one way to look at it to really understand your why is three key words. What be, do, and have. What do you want to be? In other words, where are you now? What do you want to be in this future after you've realized this growth and you've gone through these changes? What do you want to be? What do you want to do differently than you're currently now? And I don't mean just your intentions and actions to get you there. I'm talking about what does your new life now look like? What are you doing differently? And what do you want to have? And have can be your material things, but it could also have a more successful team, have a better ability to scale your business, or have better relationships at home. So it could be expressed in many ways. So that's the G part of growth.
Mm,
R is resilience and entrepreneurial thinking. And, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, being able to tap into entrepreneurial thinking, find more effective and efficient ways to do things, will bring more value, that your you self will bring more value if you embrace this entrepreneurial thinking into wherever you work. Bottom line is, we got to accomplish more with less resources. Why are people so excited about AI? Because, most people are saying AI will help me automate things. Well,
mm.
which is a starting point. A lot of people don't understand the second value of AI, and that's the real value. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here, but it's about augmentation.
Mm,
So, as an individual, it's about developing resilience and entrepreneurial thinking, and that's part of how you get growth ready. Because if
mm,
you don't have those mindsets, you're going to be held back. The O is optimize laser focus. You want to optimize your laser focus on your goal, on what your desired place will be. So the way to look at this is you think of a laser. A laser is, I mean, if you go into a dark room and you need some illumination, throw on a big wide floodlight. It floods everything. Now, it floods everything. You can now see everything, but you're not focused on one specific thing. You start taking that floodlight and now you make it a spotlight. Now you're illuminating a smaller section, but putting much more attention on it. Now, if you pinpoint that light to a fine laser, so now what you've done is you've got this red dot, if you will, on something specific, and it's so focused that really you're not seeing anything else. See, the notion is that I educate people on, Steve, is this: you need to lock on to what your goal is and lock out all the noise. You
mm.
need to be a little obsessive. The bigger your goal of growth, the more you really need to be a little out of whack. They say, everything in moderation. Well, look, even in moderation should be done in moderation. I've
Right.
never met anybody in life who has done anything substantial, anything that has been profound, if they're just average and ordinary with their day. I'm going to share a buzzword that drives me nuts: work life balance. It's a load of stuff.
Yeah.
Because of life, in my opinion. I understand the concept, but let me offer a better way to look at it. First of all, in our modern life, with all the distractions and everything else, we're never going to do anything perfect, or anything, achieve anything meaningful if we're in perfect balance. A better way to look at this is home life and business and work life alignment.
Mhm.
It's about being in alignment. So it's about blurring the line between the two. Now, we do need to have time for home. We need to have time on how to focus at work. I get that. But if what we do from day to day for income is an extension of who we are as a human being and how we treat our loved ones and our extended family and our hobbies, if we are in alignment, then it's a lot easier for us to step into areas where, okay, child is sick, something really needs to happen on the home front. So we're out of a lot, we're out of the balance, if you will, with
Mhm.
work. But we need to be where we are for to focus our energy. Same thing if we're doing something exceptional. Um, that is a growth issue in our work life, we're going to be out of balance, but we can be perfectly in aligned. And I
Yeah.
think that's a much more mature way of looking at it.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's
just
that optimize laser focus thing, sir.
yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, to just to kind of split this up almost in half, the growth acronym, just to sort of speak to a common theme there, that the alignment piece really does run through the first half of that acronym, in the sense of when you acknowledge the need for change that comes with pursuing a goal, you suddenly realize quite quickly that resilience is just, it comes with it. Like the ability to change is a very resilient act in itself, because every time you think you figured out something that has, produce some form of a change, you're then hit by a wall that says, no, you have to keep changing, you have to keep evolving, you have to keep finding ways to pivot and adapt to whatever it may be. And that's a resilience muscle that we must be practicing so consistently. But that final piece through the first half of the acronym, the laser focus, I love how you put it with the locking in, but also locking out, because that's going to be the temptation as we try to change. We're going to continually have people voices or some sort of influence from social media, whatever it may be, all these kind of influences and noises that come with the growth journey. They're going to try to keep working their way in. They're going to keep trying to work their way in and distract us from the goal that we've already acknowledged requires consistency of change and consistency of adaptation as we go. And so being aligned in those three parts of this is so crucial. Otherwise, really, you're just going to keep coming right back to the beginning all the time, knowing, oh, here I go again. I got to change, because as I was changing, I went back to my old ways, and because I wasn't resilient enough, or I wasn't laser focused in enough in terms of optimizing that ability to do that. So I really appreciate already just that necessity to be in alignment with those three components through the first half of the acronym.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that as a great sort of summary. And there's an old saying. I never came up with this myself, but I've heard it. Um, a friend of mine who's very successful, very wealthy man. He says, so many people want to have what I have, but they'll never do what I did to get what I
Hmm.
have.
Right.
And I think that's a very enlightened way of acknowledging the effort that it takes. So the gentleman that shared that with me, he went through a lot of growth stages. He can went, created new comfort zones and had to, some of the most negative people in his life, he had to separate himself from that negative talk you would address. He also had to work in a whole lot. There's the bombardment of messages that if you're not locking out that noise, as you said correctly, is going to mess you up. But you also got to make sure you got to lock out your own negative noise.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so so I listen to what he said, and I keep asking myself, okay, I'll look at people. I've got a lot of mentors and coaches that have poured into me. And I would love to do some of the things that they do or have or be or whatever. But then I have to keep asking myself, but am I prepared to pay the price like
Hmm.
they did? Am I prepared to do what they did to have
Hmm.
what they have?
Hmm.
And it's
Exactly.
and it's a real moment of I think you got to be brutally introspective and honest with yourself. This is not an exercise of looking out the window and saying, "Okay, well, who has screwed me over in life? Who has held me back?" It's a different pane of glass. The pane of
Hmm.
glass is the mirror. You got to look in the mirror, not out the window, but look in the mirror. Be brutally introspective and say, "Okay, uh, am I prepared to do what is necessary?"
Yeah.
You know? And that leads me right to the W actually in the acronym here. The W is work before words. You know, intentions are great. A visualization is great. Writing down your affirmation statements is great, but it means nothing unless you get off your butt and do it.
Hmm.
Work is where it's all about. It's about your daily actions, your daily behaviors. It's about holding yourself very accountable to these things. Um, Two more letters in the acronym just to complete the model,
Yeah.
if I will. T is about having a teachable mindset. It's about being coachable. A book that I wrote with a buddy of mine, Bill, was called, Coachable. So the whole, title is Coachable Beyond Winning Teams to Changing Lives. And you think about this, the most impactful coaches are not just coaches that help the team succeed. You as a swimming coach certainly know that, but as a business coach as well, it's not just about helping them succeed. It's about actually pouring into their lives and helping them develop and grow as a human being to change their lives. But it's a neat play on words. Let's just talk about the word coachable.
Hmm.
See, what we did with that book is we divided it actually into two books. The first part of that book, the first book, if you will, is, are you coachable yourself, the reader? Because what we're saying is the second part is, are you able to coach others? Which is great. As leaders, we should be coaching other people. But what we have found, and I see this all over the world, the people that are the best coaches are first and foremost coachable themselves.
Yep.
Yes, they're confident people. Yes, they have a good, strong opinion of themselves, but they are so open. See, the challenge is most people, if you ask them, are you coachable? Are you open to feedback? And, they'll say yes. The reality is, Steve, they're not. They
Right.
just want the praise.
Yep. Yep.
They
Before.
they have so they, unfortunately, their self-esteem or whatever is so blocked that they're not being honest on how they can grow, and it's just going to end there. And lastly, H, this is the glue that holds it all together. It's your habits and being accountable, because
Mm,
it's your day-to-day habits you develop through as a result of all these things, and holding yourself accountable to your coach, to your loved one, your life partner, to your trench buddy, your fellow sales teammates, whatever the case may be, the board of directors, whomever. Holding yourself accountable to saying, listen, I said I was going to go on a growth journey. I was very transparent on what that looks like and how we're going to measure it. Here are my milestones, and I will be transparent.
yep. And I love that those last two pieces is so on the importance of it being on the individual. Like, and as you go through that acronym, the way you presented it, it actually helps to see that while you may want to start externally in terms of looking outwards and just considering all these different moving parts, the more and more you go through this kind of process and you respect these kind of steps, the more you realize that the all of the expectation, all of the commitment that you're making when it comes to growth, it just piles more and more internally. It comes onto your own shoulders. And if you're not teachable and if you're not willing to create the kind of habits around your own growth process, then really you're going to be left irritated. You're going to be left frustrated. You're going to be left wondering what happened and why it's not working. And those last two pieces, especially the introspective part of that, really does resonate for me.
Yeah, and the thing of it is if you're not truly ready, as I said, going back to your why,
Hmm.
and then once you got clear on your why, if you don't follow through some sort of a logic model to get there, not only are you going to actually do harm to yourself, that's what I'm saying. You got to be ready. I love the
Hmm.
keyword. Growth is awesome. The keyword to me, when you ask the question, and it's such a great question, is what does it really mean to be ready?
Hmm.
Because
Yep.
if you're not ready, then the model doesn't matter.
Hmm.
So the other part I want to talk on just for a second, though, is not only the harm you can do for yourself if you don't take it seriously and you're not ready and you don't have some sort of a formula to take yourself forward, is the harm that you can do to everyone else that cares about you and you care about them in your home life, at work, because you're going through such a transformative process. You know, you are going to impact the closest people to you in your work sphere, in your home sphere. I think there's a moral obligation to take it extremely seriously and do no harm to others.
Mm.
And I think that's a part that is virtually never talked about. It's all me, 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 me. I'm gonna lose faith in myself. I'm gonna lose, this didn't work out. It's gonna just reinforce that I'm a loser. My self worth goes down. I'm gonna be even more entrenched into my old self limiting beliefs and comfort zones. That is all very true, and I understand the damager. I'd like to have more people discussing about the ramifications to others when we fall short.
Mm.
Because I think that's a whole other topic. That's another book kind of thing. But I look at these issues very seriously, and absolutely, and I'm coaching someone. I take it very seriously. I'm there to be of service to them, to help them achieve their growth ideals, targets, etc. But I'm also very mindful. I never want to create a situation that is going to accelerate harm to other people. It's about quite on the contrary. It's about how can you take other people positively on the journey with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, one thing that we talk about consistently on the show is that very point, is that we don't want to be pursuing growth at the expense of how I've always framed it in my business, the optimal self. We don't, and part of being the optimal self is being the optimal version of you in all aspects of life. And my argument is always, you don't get to be that, and you can't aspire to be that if all that's surrounding you are dead bodies and people that are frustrated and all this kind of thing like that. You can't possibly be showing up as the best version of yourself if it's all at the expense of everybody around you. So it's a great point that you're making. And what I also appreciate about it is even coming back through your acronym of just saying, okay, when you look at optimizing laser focus, for instance, that's a great time to check in and just say, hey, listen, I've gotten to this point. I've started to acknowledge that I've got some goals. I'm willing to change. I'm becoming really resilient in that process. But if I'm going to lean so much into the resilience to where I'm just pushing myself at all costs, then all of a sudden the costs are probably the people that matter most around you, whether it be within your business or within your life. And to actually use that time, like you said, in the optimizing your laser focus, is to say, okay, as I'm narrowing in, as I'm getting clearer, is there any damage around me already? Is there any sign or evidence that this could be leading to some sort of damaging behaviors for others around me? Because then you get to ask those really powerful questions, which is when coaching, as we both know, can become a very powerful exercise. It's like, okay, as you start to look at what you want and these goals that you're pursuing, are we sure that everything around us is positioned the way it needs to be in order for you to do this in a healthy, effective manner where, like you said, hopefully nobody gets hurt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a great starting point is, asking or coming up with that definition. What does the optimal self look like?
Mhm.
I think that's a good point. But I think a much more mature way, if you've articulated this really well, Steve, is what is the optimal situation,
Mhm.
of which a subset is your optimal self. But if we're in the same space, if you will, then it's
Yeah.
my optimal self working in collaboration with your optimal self. That's an optimal situation.
Mhm.
And I think it's the vernacular we use. I mean, words matter. Words really do matter. And so I just wanted to mention, just as it occurs to me,
Mhm.
I've created a couple years ago, and I've fine tuned it over the past number of years. I've created what I call a growth ready self assessment. It's only a 2 page tool, but a very powerful 21 different dimensions for people to assess themselves. And I've never done this with any podcast before, but we're buddies. We've known each other for years. An offer to any of your the listeners and viewers, they can send me an email, just preface that the podcast, and they want their free copy of the Growth Ready Self Assessment. I'll email it to them. They don't go on any lists. They don't be bombarded with spam or other crap. Will meet me on the mountain or on the beach side. None of that stuff. It's just a great tool for people to really take that model I've created and do an honest check in. And I also encourage people to have people that know them very well assess them and give that
Mhm.
360 perspective. It's again, one of the tests of this. You'll find out if you're truly coachable enough, even if you're prepared to do it the way I'm prescribing.
Yeah, I love it, and even appreciate you making it in line with the brand too, and talking about the growth readiness part of it as well. It's just the and I think it's a great stepping stone, if you will, as well with the conversation, just to talk a little bit more about that investment in the self and that ability. You talked about coachability, which you did with a guy that I know all too well in Bill Whittle, and I think that's the firstly, he's the one that introduced the two of us, and I will be forever thankful for the role he's played in my life. But at the same time, being coachable and being able to be simply comfortable enough to assess oneself, not just to simply be aware, but to actually then apply. And I think so much of what we're talking about here from the readiness side of things is the growth part of this would indicate that you're willing to conduct the self assessment. The readiness part of it would indicate that you're willing to do something about what it is you've now found out. And that, again, is where we tend to lack as society, as competitors, however you want to put it. It's what typically separates those that perform versus those that perform at a high level. And I'm just curious, in your work in just executive coaching, let's say, Dennis, where is it you potentially start with an individual when it comes to them getting better at just simply receiving and applying information that comes from, let's say, a tool like the one that you're suggesting we use?
Yeah, yeah. For example, so typically, like on this particular tool, the assessment is there's 21 statements, and you read the statement, and then you assess yourself on a rating. One, that you strongly disagree with that particular, up to four, you strongly agree.
Hmm.
So invariably, the way it's set up is a whole bunch of fours means you're a rock star, that you are so growth ready, you're ready to rumble. Anything less than a four is an opportunity for enhancement and development. A one is something that really should be, dealt with very quickly. Now, going to your point, most people, what they'll do is when they go through this particular assessment or assessments like this, and I use this concept when I'm doing coaching with people, is they will look at their strengths and they're going to double down on their strengths, which, by the way, they're going to get some value, but they're only
Hmm.
going to get a small, it'll be a very limited amount of value. Where you get your best bang for the buck is to identify that single lowest area. So if there's just, let's say for an example,
Hmm.
executive has a whole whack of threes and fours, but there's one. That means in that one area, they've determined, or even if they didn't see it, because we all have our blind spots,
Sure.
the three other people that assess this individual, him or her, have identified me. I'll go, yes, this is the place where this person really needs to work. I immediately remove everything else and we start doing a real deep dive. And what I do is I have a process that I take people through to understand where their blockages, first of all, on why they're not even seeing that. So we first of all, we get them to a point where they're no longer blind. There's no blind spot on this. Secondly, we go back, we make an alignment and connection between how this one area is so indicative of what's holding them back. So I ignore everything else for the time being. We get that one big major enhancement. We go to work on that. And that's going to also tell me, by the way, um, the degree to which they're really coachable.
Hmm.
And part of my contract, I have an agreement, a coaching agreement that talks. It actually speaks right in the language of them being coachable, transparent, and accountable. And I reserve the right to fire any client.
Hmm.
And they get reminded sometimes, and listen, and you paid the money up front, you're not prepared to do the work. You're not getting a refund, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to waste my time with you.
Hmm.
So we have these very focused conversations, and invariably, almost all the time, they'll have a breakthrough. Now, when they get a breakthrough, think of this though: if we can articulate the single biggest thing that's holding them back, and within a process of sometimes just three or four check-ins, coaching sessions, whatever you want to call it, right? That all of a sudden seeing huge gains in this. Everyone else is seeing this. Imagine now what I can do with that individual.
Right. That's the
Again,
power.
it again, think about this. When you're doing an introspective examination with someone as a coach, are you going to shed a floodlight, a spotlight, or a laser beam? The laser
Hmm.
beam will be much more impactful to
Hmm.
identify that single biggest first step. And this is not to say there might be three or four or five other things they need help on. But unless you can get that significant, meaningful, life changing win happening, it's going to stop. You see, I have a personal philosophy. And my personal philosophy on coaching is that, a coaching session can take an hour, but it can impact a life.
Hmm.
And that's the intention, that's the intensity, that's my commitment that I pour into these sessions.
Yeah, and it's felt. I mean, I have been fortunate enough to, as people will know, having listened to the first time you came on, we talked a little bit about how we became friends and how we built our relationship. And you coached me through the writing of my first book. I get to say first book because I have full intentions of it being the first of many. But the beauty of that was that I actually felt that personally. I felt someone who just wanted to push me, wanted to challenge me, but allowed me to see that through the writing of my book, this can be something that it can have an impact on enough people to impact them for a lifetime and therefore me for a lifetime. And I think that's the beauty of this when we, and I love the metaphor, this notion of just like the floodlight, the spotlight, and then all the way into the laser beam. It's like, okay, I'm challenging every listener right now. Like, where are you refraining from having that laser beam shine on you right now? Like, and we're all doing it, just to be clear. Like, this is not me and Dennis getting to sit high up on our chairs saying that we're somehow immune to this kind of thing. We're just as guilty of this stuff all the time, but we're willing to have the laser beam shine on us, and that's the impact. That's where the growth can truly happen. And I was just going to say too, like, one other question I really wanted to get to for you is that when you look at your own growth journey and you think about the way in which you pour into all these other people, whether it be audiences or one-on-one clients, where do you start now, Dennis, when you feel some sort of maybe a block, a feeling of being stuck, maybe even a little bit lost, or feeling as though you're practicing some avoidance tactics? What are you doing to get back on that track to ensure that you're still pursuing growth the same way you've been doing it a while? I'm not going to start calling out your age or anything like that, Dennis, but at the same time, your motivation and your energy for what you do is as high as it's ever been. And that's the beauty of every time I get to connect with you, is that it's so apparent. So what do you do in those moments where you get stuck, where you feel as though you need some support to get back on the track and keep growing?
What an amazing question. Phenomenal. Okay, so on that, the quick answer is this: is um, reach out to your truth teller. Your truth
Mm,
teller. So, in some cases, I'm the truth teller for some of my clients that have become very dear friends of mine over the years. Whoever that is, it's that person who absolutely has your back. That loves and respects you in a professional environment too. Loves and
right.
respects you, warts and all, right? And I'm
The
very
professional environment is an important caveat, because I'm not asking my spouse that, because I'm going to get way more than I asked for. That's for sure.
Well, it's interesting you're saying that because in my case, because you did direct the question to me,
Yes, it's true.
my truth teller is my wife, Debbie.
Okay.
And now she's also my business partner. So our holding company owns all the other companies. She's the 50%. I'm the big mouth front end. She's the wisdom and common sense behind the scene.
Right.
She calls me on my BS.
Yeah.
She knows where I really want to go. And again, I mean, yes, when I hear it, doesn't mean am I always happy when I hear it? No.
Mm,
Um, but she so understands me. It's like one of the secrets of providing feedback. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And it's
mhm,
style shifting to really make sure that the feedback is truly understood by the person you're giving the feedback to. So
mhm.
in a loving but no BS way, my wife Debbie is my truth teller. And oh, by the way, and Steve, I mean, I as a guy, I'll like, and I'll sort of get all blustery and say, no, that's not true. And
Right.
she smiles at me, and then I'll go and think about it. And, eventually, an hour later, 3 days later, depends on what it is, I go, yeah, she's right.
Yep.
And then I'll say that she goes, yeah, I know.
Yep.
But the thing of it is I'm very fortunate, and I acknowledge that in her that she is my truth teller. The
Mm,
key that I'm suggesting here is for everyone to have a truth teller or
mhm,
more in
mhm.
your life. And but be very careful though before you invite someone to that role. It
Yeah.
truly has to be someone who has your best interests, who truly cares for your well-being, and
Yeah.
somebody who's also, by the way, is bold enough and frank enough, not just trying to make you feel good, but to force that mirror in your face, and you're pushing the mirror away and say, no, I want to look outside the window and blame someone else.
Mhm.
No, look up the
No.
mirror, dummy, and will hit you over the head if necessary with the mirror to get your
Yeah.
attention. Um, if you could do that, by the way, if you can find a true teller and ask for their feedback, you're already so well on the path to being coachable.
Yeah, I love it, and it's definitely not an entry level position. I love how you kind of allude to that. Like, it has to be someone who's proven and been around and tested. But around your answer there and your wife Debbie, like, for me, two things that I heard that I think everyone needs to recognize is important here. One, of the circumstances that she is also your business partner. It's not just someone who's completely detached from this sort of professional drive and this area of performance. She's in it with you and she understands it. But two, something you said there that I don't want people to miss, she knows where you're trying to go. She knows what you're trying to achieve. That is such an important part of this when it comes to having your truth teller. If they're not educated on what you want, that is not a word of truth that you need. That's not going to serve you because they don't know where you're even trying to go. And so, like, a huge part of this is actually the roles and responsibilities that you have as the person receiving the truth in positioning this person to do so successfully, making sure, like, hey, I need to give them the right circumstances for them to be the truth teller. And I also need to educate them enough on what it is I want so that I can actually use them to the best of my ability.
And that's so important. And I'd say where I'm very fortunate is, so Debbie certainly qualifies on all that.
Yeah.
But she's also, and I'm gonna use that word alignment again. Her core values and mine are so much in line that even though some of the things are much more me oriented, like for example, I work consistently in 60 countries. In the next 2 years, that's going to be up to 80 countries. So that is a very specific growth target.
Mm-hmm.
I've written 26 books. I've got two more books that are coming out in the next 6 months. Very specific things. Now, she supports me in this. She owns 50% of the business, so she understands the economic ramifications of me doing this. Um, we're very much in alignment. So she understands my why I'm doing it. She understands how it's part of me wanting to be. I'm 61. I've been at this almost 40 years. Uh, I want to make sure I'm still relevant. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to work financially, but I love what I do, which is important. But I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that it's not just about serving my needs of, hey, I feel like I'm doing a good job. Oh, look at me. I'm a coach. I'm a keynote speaker, blah, blah, blah. But I want to be relevant. I want to have true impact in those that I'm of service to.
Mm-hmm.
And she understands that and she's of the exact same mindset. So that way, in that role of a truth teller, she's absolutely exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and
And
this is what I hope for all of your listeners and viewers.
100%. We can all aspire to find our own Debbie, no doubt, no doubt. And I think I think something that was just really cool there as well is that one of the first things you said in response to my first question was around your desire to be of impact and to actually come all the way back around here at the end and hear that that remains as true today as ever before in where you are in 40 years into doing what it is you're doing. But I would not be doing my job if I didn't recognize here as we wrap up is that the timing of this episode actually falls in with you receiving a fairly prestigious award, brother. So we're going to be the Real Leaders Magazine top executive coaches in 2025. So you're just receiving this now. It's just being announced. You've known about it for a little while now, but the only real question I have for you at this point is when you receive something like this, what does that actually speak to? What does the award itself represent in terms of what it's taken for you to maybe get to this point?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I was humbled by it because this particular Real Leaders magazine goes up to 50,000 CEOs around the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal. So I was very humbled by it. Obviously, to be brutally frank, I'm very pleased because it's a recognition of my life's work. But as I think about the journey of being recognized for this, and all the help that or facilitation or guidance that I've provided my clients, it just reminds me that I'm not a master of this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just a student. And I have to remember that as an active student that I have to continuously come out of my comfort zone. I have to continuously follow my own growth model and explore new ways of doing things. Strive to be better, hold myself even more transparently accountable to my truth teller, to my clients, to my children, my four grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be, and again, we have our lazy days, we have our imposter syndrome days. We all have that.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to go back once again, as I often do, get really clear on my why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, I don't know how many years I got left. Hopefully, many, many. I want my legacy is the impact that I can hopefully leave with my clients, and hopefully they can touch millions and millions and millions of lives. I feel the job. I feel I've only been at the tip of the iceberg. I feel that my potential to impact more people as I'm learning more and developing myself is only just beginning. But I cannot allow myself to sort of rest on those laurels and
Mhm.
go, "Oh, I'm so wonderful, cute, and talented." I have to apply these principles and triple down on them.
For sure, for sure. But you take it from someone who also struggles with acknowledging and celebrating any version of success that comes towards them. This is definitely a time for celebration. I'm just very, very just humbled and proud to be as in your circle as I am. I consider myself someone who has had the pleasure to really get to know you and consider myself fortunate to learn from you. And just huge congratulations for this, brother. It's all well deserved. And we're just excited on the Growth Ready podcast to be one of the first people getting to acknowledge it and celebrate it on your behalf. So again, just huge congratulations for you. But anyway, at this point, Dennis, as I always allow people to do, just wanted to give you the space here to allow people to find where they can learn more about you. So where should we be going to learn more about everything that you have at your disposal that you can provide to our folks?
Well, nowadays with AI, it's real easy. Pick up your phone and talk to it,
That's right.
ChatGPT or Google or somebody, Siri,
Yeah.
someone's going to give you something. But you can go to my website, check me out on LinkedIn. Some website is real simple. It's my name, DenisCauvier.com, DENIS, Cauvier.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. Get your own complimentary copy of the self-assessment, the growth rated self-assessment.
Hmm.
It'll give you a great sense of my writing style, how I think. As I said, there's no. I'm a lousy marketer. I don't do pipeline management, follow up, sell. Just you're not going to be harassed by me if you send me your email.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are just simple things. I'm not a huge person on like the TikTok, Instagram, and all those things. I do a little bit on Facebook. Um, I probably shouldn't do better job.
Well,
Part of
listen,
that.
the fact of the matter is there's enough about you out there where whatever path people choose to go and find content or read books or whatever it might be, they're going to be able to find Denis Cauvier somewhere. There's no doubt about it, and we'll have all the information in the show notes as we always do for all of our guests. But listen, brother, again, as always, it's always wonderful just to share some time with you and learn from you, continue to learn from you, and just appreciate your generosity of insights here for our listeners here today. And just best of luck with everything going forwards, brother.
I really appreciate that, and thank you for having me here today. And I just want to do a shout out to you, Steve. Keep on doing what you're doing. Running a podcast, the discipline it takes to do that, not an easy thing. I've been a fan of your podcast, watched so many episodes. You're bringing real value to the community. So kudos to you, brother. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
Take care.
And my thanks again to Denis for rejoining us on the show. To come from when we were career competitor to now where we are as growth ready. The conversation was much different this time and was very specific towards how Denis sees and approaches growth, specifically the laser pointed focus, homing in on something about yourself that you know is holding you back. You probably already know what it is. You may need his self assessment. I encourage you to utilize it if you're willing to reach out to him. But even without that, I would immediately just push you and say, okay, what is that part of myself? What is that thing about myself that I know I am so guilty of doing when work needs to be done? I'll give you my own example. I am a procrastinator. I've been a procrastinator since I was 8 years old, and it's a part of myself that I've not only come to identify and accept is just going to keep happening, but I've actually started to be able to almost tame it, if you will, by embracing it. Because I embrace it and because I acknowledge it and don't just sort of act like it's not there, it's allowed me to actually get a better grip of it, to use it in a way to where, hey, based on where I'm at in a certain process, I can say, okay, at this point, I'm procrastinating and there's a reason why. And to actually use the procrastination as a step into curiosity. That's what happens when we start to befriend, if you will, these parts of ourselves that we can only identify when we become laser focused on what it is specifically that might be holding us back. So what is that for you? And why are you not acknowledging it and doing something about it? We are a show of action, people. We are not a show of consideration. We are not a show of just speaking about it. We are a show of doing something about it. So take that message from Denis and try to find ways to implement and focus more on what that specific area of you may be that is holding you back. Again, my thanks to Denis for joining us and for his generosity of insights, and a huge congratulations to him as well for his award, much deserved award as one of the top executive coaches in 2025. And at this point, as always, encouraging you just to continue to support the show any way that you can by subscribing, by sharing the episode with someone that you know this would be of service to, and leaving a rating for us as well. All these things help us continue to grow and continue to be more available and accessible by those who aren't currently listening to us. So I appreciate your help with that, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck with anything and everything you've got going on in your world, and look forward to doing this again with you very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.